Welcome to Cinema Convos. This is the show where we bring guests with different tastes in film to have a meaningful discussion about the art of cinema. I'm your host, Yash, and I'm here with my co-host, Zach, and our special guest, Paul. And today we're discussing the film Ex Machina from 2014, written and directed by Alex Garland, starring Domhnall Gleeson, Alicia Vikander, and Oscar Isaac. In Ex Machina, a young programmer is selected to participate in a groundbreaking experiment in synthetic intelligence by evaluating the human qualities of a highly advanced humanoid AI. And before we get started, just wanted to issue a quick spoiler warning. We will get into the plot points of this movie. So if you haven't seen it, we recommend checking out the movie as well. Okay, and just to get started, we'll start with Paul. What's your first memory or best memory with this movie?
When I went to university, when I went to Brussels, a good friend of mine, Tom, who I spent pretty much most of my time with in college, I had heard about the movie initially over the internet, and A24 was just starting to buzz at that time. And he kept raving about the film, and he showed it to me, and I remember being completely floored by it. And then over the years, once a year, once every other year, I just watch it. I don't know. It's a movie that feels new every time I watch it. So I feel like I can't really point on one single experience. They've always been very memorable experiences for me.
Yeah, for sure. Zach, did you want to jump into how your experiences with this movie?
Yeah. Okay. So I saw it. So I saw it like a few years after. Probably saw it like 2016, 17. I actually saw it for the first time when I was at A&M. The organization that Josh and I were in, that shows like movies on campus. That was one of the movies that they showed in the spring, and that was like the first time I'd ever seen that movie. So,
were you the art house director that year?
No, I was not the art house director. That was my sophomore year. I wasn't the art house director.
Gotcha. So neither of us were in charge yet, so it was before our time.
But no, I never seen it, so I decided, hey, I'm gonna sit and watch it. And it was.
Did you watch it at the screening, the campus screening?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I saw the screen. No, it was really good. It was really good. I'd always heard good things about it. I never really watched it. I'd watched some A24 stuff, but I was never really I'd seen some A24 films, but I never really got into like their entire catalog and whatnot. But no, I really, really enjoyed it. I had heard some parallels of like other sci-fi films and stuff, but no, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, for sure. For me, my friend who was one of my roommates at the time. It's funny because we both got into the show Black Mirror around the same time. And this movie reminds me a lot. It feels like a 2-hour Black Mirror episode.
I was going to say the exact same thing. I actually have it written down.
Yeah. And he recommended this movie to me because of that. He was like, this movie, if you like this stuff, you'll enjoy this movie. I just saw it recently. So I didn't see it in the theater or anything. I saw it once it was already like available on Blu-ray and everything like that. And I hadn't seen it since then. It was like 2014, 2015. And I just saw it again like yesterday. And yeah, I really like it. I mean, it's not like one of my like all-time favorite movies, but I really appreciate good science fiction, and I think it's a solid one.
Hello, Caleb.
Do you have a name?
Yes. Ava.
I'm pleased to meet you, Ava.
I'm pleased to meet you too. I've never met anyone new before. Only Nathan.
Then I guess we're both in quite a similar position.
Haven't you met lots of new people before?
None like you.
And there's a lot to get into for sure. But yeah, my first time watching it was just like, in college, it came out. And also one big thing about this movie that I really like, as Paul mentioned, like, it was kind of before A24 really took off, and it was kind of early in their wave of movies. And it was one of the first like A24 movies that I really enjoyed. It's the first time I'd ever heard like Alex Garland as a filmmaker. I think it is his first movie.
Yeah, I think so as well.
I didn't know who, I had no idea who Alicia Vikander was before this movie. Now I obviously know who she is. She's gotten a lot bigger. I knew Domhnall Gleeson was like Bill Weasley and he was in a Black Mirror episode, but that's about it. But Oscar Isaac, all three of the main actors in this movie, I really didn't know that much about them before I saw this movie. Like now I know who they are and like I follow their careers. But at the time I was like, it felt like a lot of new talent being put on the screen.
Yeah, I knew a little bit of Oscar Isaac. He was in a movie. He was in that movie Inside Llewyn Davis.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was in another movie. He was in another A24 movie, I think either the same year or the year before Ex Machina, a most violent year with Jessica Chastain.
I do
And then
not like A Most Violent Year. Hot take.
I haven't seen it
it's,
yet.
I think it's a super boring movie. But
it's,
I like Inside Llewyn Davis.
I didn't like
Yes.
Inside Llewyn Davis that much. I just watched it for the first time a couple weeks ago, and it's good. It's I understand why it's so revered, but it didn't connect with me that well.
It's good. Yeah, I wouldn't say I love Inside Llewyn Davis, but I like it more than A Most Violent Year. I just didn't. I didn't really feel
Yeah.
anything when I watched that movie because I love
I've
like
also
crime.
heard-
I love like crime movies and like crime thrillers, and I felt like Most Violent Year was. I think it's based on like a real situation, but it was just kind of dull.
Yeah.
Great cast though. I
Um,
mean, of course, great cast.
With Inside Llewyn Davis, I haven't seen it, but like I've heard that it doesn't really. It's a Coen Brothers movie, but it doesn't really feel like a Coen Brothers movie very much.
Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely got some of those like quirky Coen Brothers idiosyncratic like C's. I think they went for a lot of. I talked to my brother about this a while ago, a couple weeks ago. We were talking about like the choice to like a lot of the camera lighting feels very soft. It's got a very soft. It's got like a very glistening look to it, and I think it's like it kind of like simulates like a dream. I think it's just an artistic choice to kind of resonate how like the story feels like not like a farce per se, but it does have kind of like not a fairy tale aspect either. Inside Llewyn Davis is a time loop kind of, right? Like it ends, the first scene is the last scene and the last scene is the first scene. And actually the first scene doesn't make sense until you've seen the rest of the movie. But I don't like how it looks. I just don't think it's I think it's just a choice they made that I don't agree with. But like I don't think it's a bad movie by any chance. Like by any, it's just not my thing. It just doesn't resonate with me in that sense. I like the content a lot. I like the idea of this musician struggling and like the realities of how bleak it is to be a struggling musician and stuff. In that sense, they definitely achieved what they were trying to say with that. I don't know if I'd watch it again, maybe, but like it didn't really knock me off my feet the way I thought it was going to.
Yeah, with that movie.
And also, there's something interesting about Inside Llewyn Davis. Something I was looking at. The reason it didn't really feel like a lot of the other Coen Brothers movies, especially in the terms of how it looks. Roger Deakins, like who the Coen Brothers usually have as their cinematographer, wasn't available, so they had to go with someone else. And this cinematographer, I forget his name, but like his trademark is a lot more soft lighting and stuff. So that's why it feels very soft as opposed to a Roger Deakins film. Shot.
Interesting to think of that movie shot by Roger Deakins. I don't even know what that movie looks like. I don't know if I'm having a hard time visualizing his style with that story. But I think he probably would have made it work, right? Like I said, not a bad movie. Just I thought I saw Oscar Isaac for the first time in Drive.
He was in Drive.
Yeah,
he was in
Drive. And that's the thing, right, about Oscar Isaac is like he doesn't even like Gary Oldman always does this thing where like he always has intense makeup and like wearing such intense costumes that you always forget that it's him. But like with Oscar Isaac, he doesn't really look that different in all of his characters, but like he's sort of like seamlessly disappears into the film as the character and not as the actor playing the character, right? And I think that's like with this movie especially, like his bald head and his big beard, like you totally forget it's him, right? And if you compare this performance to like how he is in like Force Awakens or like the new Star Wars trilogy versus how he is in Drive versus how he is in Inside Llewyn Davis, he's turning out completely different characters who are completely differently motivated, who have different types of aspirations as well as different tics and mannerisms and stuff. And he's such a nuanced and subtle performer, and I really, really respect him for that. And I think this, for me, Ex Machina is my favorite showing of his, and I think like Domhnall Gleeson as well is one of my favorite talents right now in the sense that I love what projects he picks. I just saw Frank a couple weeks ago, which was really interesting. But like one of my favorite rom-coms of all time, About Time, for example.
Great movie.
Love him in that as well. But like he's nothing like that like he is in this movie. He's always like he's kind of like the soft guy who's like
kind of easygoing
and just try and be courageous at some point, but like kind of very guided by his emotions in all of his characters and stuff, as well as General Hux and stuff. Another crossover from the two of them.
I totally forgot to mention About Time when I mentioned Domhnall Gleeson earlier. I had seen that movie at this point too.
It was going to come up eventually. It's a huge favorite. I love that movie. I've seen it a countless number of times.
But yeah, with Oscar Isaac, I wanted to mention I think his character in this movie is probably the most entertaining. It's so unique because one thing I've noticed in movies in general, whenever there's a character that's a genius, it's very like over the top and like, oh, he's a nerd. But in this movie, it's like a regular guy who just happens to be like super smart, Like he's like a Like he's like, hey man, like what's up, dude? Like he's just talking very casually, and
Well,
I feel
not
like
just that, but
that's
he's exceptionally charismatic.
yeah, he's charismatic. He's not like awkward at all or like
And usually
socially
the crazy
anxious.
geniuses are very socially awkward
Hmm.
and all that kind of stuff. And he's not. He's good looking. He works out. He parties. Like he's
Hmm.
exceptionally
He's
charismatic,
having a
and
good
he's
time.
a genius.
Yeah,
It's almost like he's almost kind of like doing the Tony Stark thing,
yeah,
but in such a more interesting and mysterious way. And I think he's not like so jacked up on his own ego. He's just kind of tortured by his, Well, we'll talk about that in a second. I don't really want to get that much into that
for
character
sure.
first because I have a lot to say about that, I think, as well. You probably do as well.
Yeah,
But
for
yeah,
sure.
I think he knocks it out of the fucking park in this movie.
You know, no matter how rich you get, shit goes wrong. You can't insulate yourself from it. I used to think it was death and taxes you couldn't avoid, but it's actually death and shit.
Yeah, for sure. I guess moving on, let's get into what are some of your favorite aspects of this movie. It can be the characters like you've
house.
already mentioned, or okay,
The house,
the house.
probably top 3 movie houses of all time.
It's a dope house.
I was thinking today what other movie houses I like, and I was having a hard time coming up with a list.
Um,
I usually think about things like this a lot, but I think this is like the sexiest house I've ever seen in a movie. I would kill to live in that house. I don't like that it doesn't have windows and and it's obviously it ends up being a death trap by the
Oof.
end of the movie. I love that when the very first scene has no dialogue, and the very first line of dialogue is when they're in the helicopter and he asks him, he's like, when are we getting to his estate? And he says to him, we've been flying over his estate for 2 hours.
Mm.
And I think that like we're getting so much exposition within the first 3 minutes of the movies we know. And I listening back, I feel like I talked like this is also what I love about Whiplash as well, is that like getting to know your characters in under 10 words in the first like 5 minutes is I think a masterstroke of fucking genius. I think that's really hard to pull off. And I think that we know so much about who these two guys are off the start. And that's when you're talking about aspects that I love about the movie. I love a good character introduction. Not just that, because you're given so much information to understand who we're working with, but throughout the movie, so much information is sprinkled. Like you're given one piece of information, then being told that information is wrong and that it's actually this way. And then you're being told that that information is actually also incorrect and it's actually this way. Like you have the whole thing about him winning a contest. And then he's like, you deceived me. I didn't win a contest. You picked me. And he's like, yeah, because you were really smart. And then it turns out he didn't pick him because he was smart. He picked him because he's an orphan and all these other things, right? So I think the reveal of information in this movie is a fucking masterclass in how to do exposition, how to let your audience stay in the dark, but then also satisfyingly give them information and how to keep them fed. The movie always keeps us fed till the very last moment. You always think you know what's going on until you don't, and the wheel never stops turning till the very last shot.
And you didn't select me because I'm good at coding.
No. Well, no. I mean, you're okay. You're even pretty good,
You
but
selected me based on my search engine inputs.
they showed a good kid
With no family,
with a moral compass.
no girlfriend. Did you design Ava's face based on my pornography profile?
Oh, shit, dude.
Did you?
Hey, if a search engine's good for anything, right?
Yeah, I think there's a sense of like just uneasiness throughout this movie, and like you said, like it for me, what's interesting is that it just kind of jumps in. The first scene is him winning the contest, or whatever we're led to believe,
Mhm.
and I think it just gradually unfolds, which is an interesting way to show a movie. But I think it works well for this movie because this is one of those sci-fi movies that's like the year is dot dot dot. It could be like in the near future, it can be like way in the future. We don't really know.
Yeah.
I
so-
Googled what year this is and I couldn't find an answer. I was very curious
Okay.
about that.
Yeah, that's good to know because they don't mention it in the movie at least.
Well, because he makes a Ghostbusters reference, and I was like, is this part of his like? Would he have been? How old is he, and would he have grown up with Ghostbusters, or is Ghostbusters still so culturally relevant in the future that it's always going to be a part of our pop
Mhm.
culture
Maybe.
canon?
Maybe it's so far in the future that it's like a classic, like it's such a landmark film that it's still referenced.
Mhm.
100%. I felt stupid even looking it up after because I was like, of course, Ghostbusters is never going to go old.
Yeah, he's like, you never heard of Ghostbusters or something like that. He didn't
Mm.
get the reference, and
Classic, yeah.
that also I think you can add a whole other kind of ambiguity of when this movie takes place. But
So, what are
yeah,
your favorite aspects of the movie?
I absolutely love love the visual effects. I'm so glad it won the Oscar that year, because
yeah.
I think good visual effects are the ones that can make you forget you're watching visual effects. You're just seeing like actual things unfold, and I think it's very convincing. And part of it is due to Alicia Vikander's performance. It's almost kind of like
Oh my god, it's so
Alicia
seamless. Dude.
Vikander is
Holy
amazing.
shit.
the way she moves, like
The way she
robotically,
talks.
the way she talks, everything is so believable. You know,
Unreal, man.
True.
it's
Yeah.
just, and I think she's classically trained in ballet, I want to say, and that's why she's so good at like being
Oh.
able to move like that.
That makes
But,
a lot of sense, actually.
yeah, but I remember hearing that somewhere. But I love the visual effects, and I also really like how this movie uses lighting. Like
Mm-hmm.
when the power goes out and it turns
Mhm.
completely red,
Yeah.
immediately the tone of the movie shifts. Like
I love
to like
that.
bring like a lighthearted scene where she's showing him his drawing to like, oh, the power's out. Like, tell me what you know about this guy.
I do
So
love that.
you know, the shift in tone is really interesting, and how the movie uses lighting and the score and like the technical elements to convey the
score is
mood.
awesome.
I had totally overlooked the score the first time I
I
watched
did
this
too.
movie.
I've seen it like 8 times, and this was the first time I was like, "Oh fuck, the score is."
And I was listening, and I was like, I'm gonna like look up this album and maybe listen to it again. You know, like it just works.
Mhm. I was gonna ask, have you guys seen? Yeah, have you guys seen Annihilation?
I have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the other movie by Alex Garland, exactly. And I think the score in that movie is unreal. It's one of my favorite scores ever.
Yeah,
And I think visually
Annihilation is it's a whole other thing, because I feel like it's a lot more ambiguous than this movie was. Like this movie, it has a start, beginning, and a beginning, middle, and end, and you know what happens for like at least the major events, right?
yes,
You can
it's
interpret
very
certain things.
concise in its message.
But Annihilation, last 20 minutes, I couldn't tell you what happened, but I enjoyed it. I liked it. Made
I
me
think
think.
we would have to do an entire like 30-minute sidebar to talk about what happens in Annihilation. I don't really
Yeah,
think
the
that's
whole
necessary
thing.
today. Yeah, I think that just to talk about the technical aspects, what you were talking about, Yash, like his use of, you know, using music and using lighting and all that kind of stuff. I think that, like, you know, I love sci-fi horror and I love Alien. And I think this is like my favorite sci-fi horror movie since Alien. I don't know if we can describe it as horror, but like I think that like the way he uses light, the way he uses the music to build up tension and drama and fear is definitely got a lot of horror elements to it.
Yeah, I was thinking about this when I was listening to the Whiplash episode, but this is one of those movies that you can make a case for a few genres too, I think, because it is sci-fi without a doubt. Yeah, I think you can make a case for this being a horror movie, because a lot of times you're very, very uneasy and like tensed up.
It's horrifying.
And it's like
where he cuts himself open.
Yeah, that scene is I hate sharp objects and needles, so like watching that is like not fun for me. I like, give me like, you know, Tarantino like heads blowing up, I'm okay with that, but when people like cut themselves like that, I'm like, no.
I think it could also be like a thriller.
Definitely.
No, it can definitely be a psychological thriller, especially because of kind of what you were saying, Paul. And what really makes it interesting is because kind of how you were saying is that throughout the film, their idea of what's actually going on here, like it keeps changing, you know, because you're done, oh, you want a contest, no, he's chosen, and then it's like, oh, so who's really, and like the thing with Ava, you know, so like she's using him, but like you don't know that like at the beginning, and it's a whole thing of like that. That's my favorite aspects of the film, is just sort of like how the narrative kind of changes, and like you were talking about how the shift in tone a little bit, especially kind of with the power goes out in the red lighting. That's really, and it's very abrupt.
There are very sharp shifts in tone throughout this movie.
Yeah, not very movies like this is a movie that things happen very abruptly in this film. I mean, it's kind of, I mean, a lot of scenes are very slow, but when something happens, it happens very quick.
So it takes time to be able to get to know each other, I guess.
Power cuts. Backup power activated.
You're wrong.
Wrong about what?
Nathan.
In what way?
He isn't your friend.
Excuse me?
You shouldn't trust him.
I like the house a lot. It's a good movie house. It's not my favorite movie house. My favorite movie house of all time would be like Parasite. Parasite.
That's a pretty dope house too.
Because I just love the house. How the house is a character in that film.
Really is. Well, that's kind of how this house is too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but going back to some of the things we talked about, when it comes to Annihilation, without spoiling it too much, just I think Alex Garland uses a lot of visual tricks, and he uses a lot brighter colors in that movie. Make at first, the movie starts off very dark, and then it kind of like, as far as I remember, like it's not that dark for a while, but then it just gets like all kinds of crazy things start happening. And what I like about it is like not everything has to have an explanation. Even in this movie, I think I was reading about it online, but when Ava leaves him, there's a case to be made where she does it intentionally, and she just does it because she's like a robot and she doesn't like have emotions or something. I think that was like her plan. Personally, I think she like meant to leave him there.
She definitely left him on purpose. I think more so even than that is that like I think as the robot element in her, she has a goal, she has an objective, and she needs to carry out this goal, and anything that's going to stand in the way of her getting out of like the rat in the maze needs to be put by side. And,
right.
And if Caleb's character, is not trapped in, he's going to try and stop her from leaving.
Also, Caleb is one thing I was reading is that Caleb is at that moment in time the only person in the world who knows she's not human. So maybe that's part of the reason she like left him.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. That's definitely a massive element in it. I wanted to say, just bouncing off what you said earlier about the technical, the movement of the robots and how they move. There's this thing I love at the end where when she runs at him and she stabs him, there's no resistance on the blade. Like she puts it in him like butter.
Yeah, that I noticed that too this time. Like it didn't feel like a typical like movie stab. It was just
not at all. Because she has no. I mean, she's made of metal, right? She doesn't have like weakness. She can just apply as much pressure as she wants and just stab into him like metal. And that's like a very, very subtle detail that I really go crazy for, that I don't think would have even been taken into consideration in a different movie. And even the way they move, the sounds they have when they move and stuff, it just feels very, very futuristic and very I don't know, I dig it. I think it's good.
And I think one thing I remember earlier you mentioned, one more talking point I had is how you brought up Alien. I think when these kind of sci-fi horror type movies, whenever they're in like an isolated setting with a few characters, it just immediately creates this like tension for me. Because there's if one of the characters is like a bad egg or doing something sinister, like that's enough for like things to go south.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I don't know. I really like that. That's the
I love close quarters movies. I love single location movies. That's probably my favorite niche genre of film. I'm obsessed with. I have a couple of single locations I want to write myself because I think it's such an interesting format to just like trap people in a box and see how they get along with each other, and especially if it's a box they can't get out of, and you're really pushing people to their limits. And I think that's really I mean, a spaceship in space is an even more horrifying concept than this house. But I think even in what, Zach said about the house and Parasite being a character, like I think this house is also a character, in the sense that like the locks play such an important part.
Right.
And we're introduced to how the house works, and we're introduced immediately to like how the guest passes work and all that kind of stuff. And it's such a big, vital part to how the movie unfolds, There's no other way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with movies like this, it's really important. Two things are important. One, the dialogue needs to be somewhat engaging, like the things they talk about, because most of the movie is going to be just conversations, which in this movie it is. And also like the things they're doing need to be interesting, which is also the case in this movie. And I think that's why it works as one of those, single location, close quarters type of movies.
You know what the thing is what caught me this time that I hadn't really ever paid attention to, because every time I watch it, I guess I'll just get into this now. Every time I watch it, I forget how it ends. I know what the last frame is, and I know that she gets out. I know that she leaves Donald Gleason behind, but I always forget how it happens that way. I don't know how to explain that. I mean, I've seen the movie. I know what happens, but like I always forget in what order the events transpire, because you're thinking different things throughout. At first, you're thinking that you're worried about, Ava, and you're worried that she's going to get killed. And then you realize that, Oscar Isaac's been playing them the entire time. That he's actually the guy behind the whole thing, and he thinks he's outsmarting him, but actually Oscar Isaac's been ahead of the curve the entire time. And then when you realize, oh, we're safe, Oscar Isaac planned this whole like basically like contained explosion, and then you realize, oh no, Donald Gleason already fucked it all up the night before, and that's why Ava ends up being the actual person who's able to get out, because she manipulated him enough, and she's actually the bad guy. Like you're never sure who the bad guy is in the movie, and who's actually at fault for this, and even in the end, I can't really blame Ava. She did what she was programmed to do. She got out. That was the whole test, right? Like, you know, that's what Oscar Isaac programmed her to do, but he didn't like realize the human element that was going to come in to fuck the whole thing up. The whole thing is a puzzle box, and every time I watch it, I can't really figure out how it's going to end because so many things happen, but by the end, it all makes sense, right? So every time I usually watch it, I'm always trying to stay on track of how it unfolds. That I'm always so concerned with the unboxing of the puzzle that I don't know, I've never like really had a chance to stick around and look at the scenery. I mean, the visual components are obvious and you can't really miss them, but like watching it today and really finally knowing, oh yeah, this and this and this happens. I was taken with how engaging their conversations are. Like the things they talk about are so otherworldly. Like they're talking about some heavy shit in this. When they talk about like what a search engine's actual purpose could be, like what the potential of that is, you know, how we think about things like AI and stuff like that, how we think about things like sexuality and stuff like that, like, you know, having this evolution into the artificial intelligence kind of, you know, makes us look back and ponder, and kind of it's weird because he talks about humanity on this very global, universal, historic scale of, you know, the cavemen and, you know, Cro-Magnons or whatever they're called, and, you know, the evolution, and this is the next step, you know, it's an inevitable step. And just listening to them talk and debate about like these philosophies, and I think that was the most gripping thing for me when I was watching it today, and I was like, oh fuck, like they're talking about some awesome, and like the thing is like I like to think a lot about like, you know, people in the world and how societies function and all that kind of stuff, and, you know, where this is all going and stuff, but like this dude is thinking about some like extraterrestrial shit, man. He's talking about like some serious deep seated things in all of us, and, you know, especially about the things about like, you know, the attractive assistant of the magician, and like how easily we are deceived by, you know, we can be such complex and integral and, you know, sophisticated human beings, but then something like a pretty girl can completely destroy our entire circuit board, you know. And it's just so fascinating to watch how man can be so grandiose but also so fickle and so easy to fall and so corruptible. And that was really the thing that this time around got to me, is that, like, you know, even the parts that don't have to do with how the story is progressing and who done it are just fucking engaging. And they're, you know, it's such a dense text. Like, this movie is so insanely dense. There's so much to study about it. There's so much to, you know, take apart with it. We're like to the point where like I couldn't even keep notes today about all the things I wanted to talk about that they were talking about, because they talk about so much, and it's on such a big scale. We need like a 5-hour cast to just talk about the things that they were discussing, because there's such, you know, difficult questions. They're talking about gods versus men and stuff. And I just think that to me, I don't know, I just thought that was really impressive writing. I think you don't see that much, you know, people philosophizing like that without sacrificing the story, or without sacrificing plot, without sacrificing character, you know.
There's the weird thing about search engines. There's like striking oil in a world that hadn't invented internal combustion. Too much raw material. Nobody knew what to do with it. You see, my competitors, they were fixated on sucking it up and monetizing via shopping and social media. They thought that search engines were a map of what people were thinking, but actually they were a map of how people were thinking. Impulse, response, fluid, imperfect, patterned, chaotic.
So I thought that was really just something I really enjoyed about it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I actually will agree with you on the puzzle box aspect of the movie, because I also haven't seen this movie in like 5+ years, and that's part of the reasons I felt like I needed to watch it before this episode. But I did remember, like, I remember the ending. I remembered some of the things that happened, like, here and there. Like, I could not remember when he like cuts his own arm. I was kind of just waiting for it throughout the movie, and it happens like pretty close to the end.
Yeah.
And you know, I think it is. I felt the same way. Like, I remembered what happens in the movie as far as like the big picture things, but the little conversations and like what order things happen, I did not remember at all until I watched it again. So I see what you're saying there for sure.
Zach, you wanted to talk about Alicia Vikander?
Yeah, so we're talking about Alicia Vikander. How
Please.
you were saying kind of her movements in this film are so fluid, you know. It's really crazy, her character, because I mean, yeah, she's a robot, but, you know, I guess this is the point. It's so freaky how she has parts that are very clearly of a robot and very clearly of a human. Like, it's really freaky looking. It sort of falls in the uncanny alley that just, it's kind of unsettling to see it.
Yeah, for sure.
Are you attracted to me?
What?
Are you attracted to me? You give me indications that you are.
I do?
Yes.
How?
Micro expressions.
Micro expressions.
The way your eyes fix on my eyes and lips. The way you hold my gaze. Or don't. Sometimes at night, I'm wondering if you're watching me on the cameras. And I hope you are. Now your micro expressions are telegraphing discomfort.
Alicia Vikander is a really amazing actress. I think it's probably her first major role. Yeah, it was made in 2014, but the film was released in wide release in 2015. So, it was eligible for that year's Oscars, or for the 2015 Oscars. Alicia Vikander very well should have been nominated, if not gotten an Oscar for this film.
Absolutely.
But she
I couldn't agree
had
more.
made the Danish Girl in the
Yeah,
same
she went
year.
for that, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they submitted her as supporting, but but you can't be nominated for both, so they went with the Danish Girl. But no, it's Maka. But also, we're talking about the Oscars. I think it's quite amazing the fact that this won an Oscar for best visual effects. This is a movie with a budget of $15 million. Also that year, visual effects that were nominated that year. Mad Max Fury Road was also nominated that year. The Martian was also nominated that year for visual effects.
It was a pretty strong year for visual effects.
Revenant as well. The CGI like air, that door will Leonardo DiCaprio up. It lost to Ex Machina. I just love that.
I remember it being
well
a
deserved.
surprise, but a pleasant surprise. Like it was,
Yeah,
I was happy to see it.
I know that the Oscars really aren't a measure of overall greatness. It really isn't. It's a popularity contest, but it's cool when a film like that wins it. I love it.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Because, like, to be perfectly honest, the 3 films you listed, I like them more than this movie objectively. But for visual effects standpoint, I think Ex Machina did deserve to win. So I was
True.
happy to
It's
see
more
that.
creative with it. The fact, I'll go back to saying it, the fact he put clearly human parts on a clearly robotic body is freaky.
It's
and
pretty
it's just
unsettling.
so cool they did that.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I think is so interesting is that it's an interesting choice, right? Because when you're writing this movie, like, how do you do the robot? And I think that there's a way where you do this movie where it's a CGI character, or somebody in a. I think it's super interesting to have a human play a robot as opposed to having a robot playing a human. Whereas when I was thinking about that, I don't really know how you would do a robot playing a human, but I think to have it reversed, to just have the actress try to be as robotic as possible, as opposed to having to try to create a CGI character who's going to be as human as possible, is kind of the genius way to do it, right? And I don't know if I would have thought of that. And I think that that's kind of integral to making this movie work, is using a real actress and an actress who can pull it off.
I think it would be really hard to have a CGI character, have a character that looks almost human, but is a CGI, because I feel like that would look unrealistic. I don't care.
Well, there's a big studio budget version of this movie where they do it that way, right?
What is that movie?
No, I'm saying hypothetically, if they were to do it, if this was if they had done this as a big studio Hollywood production, I can only imagine they would do a CGI robot.
Well, yeah, but
They definitely could and would.
But the thing is, I'm just afraid that if the audience is supposed to believe, I don't know. I feel like making a CGI, making her CGI, the audience would have a hard time believing that I feel like she wouldn't look human.
Absolutely.
In a way.
That's what I'm saying. This is completely the right choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think that studios oftentimes don't necessarily make the good choices. I think they make the easy choices.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of, especially now that we live in a post-Avengers world where, it's just so saturated with effects and stuff. And it's not about performance anymore. It's about what can we make? How flashy can we make these movies? Where actually the constraint of a $15 million budget is totally to your advantage, because it is easier to take an actress and physically turn her into a robot on screen as it is to create an entire synthetic robot in a computer. I assume. I don't know. I can't tell you. But I think oftentimes I love low budget and low small production films that have a big idea, like Take Shelter, or like, you know, these movies that like deal with big philosophical and scientific and sci-fi questions, but like are limited in their constraints, and they usually have to make choices. You know, I think oftentimes having too much money ends up fucking up your film, you know, because you're wanting to do it the most spectacular way or whatever. But like when you have a small budget and you only have that much money, you're going to focus on the story, right? And I think that I don't know, I just think it's a really intelligent decision. I think that using Alicia Vikander is the secret weapon of this movie. I think it's the strongest point of the film. You know, she holds everything together. I think all three of them are 10 out of 10. You can't take one of them out and have the same movie. Like I don't know even know who I would replace with who. Like you can't do it. I can't do it.
And one movie that came to mind when we talked about like CGI characters being human characters is Rogue One. I thought it's a very different movie, obviously, and I still like it, but
Sure.
It's you know, the one character where the actor is obviously like passed away since the movie came out, like where the timeline fits, but it's just
Tarkin.
Yeah, Tarkin, right?
Yeah.
You know, they made him with CGI, and it's noticeable enough to where like it's like, okay, it takes me out of it a little bit.
Well, even The Irishman, which I loved a lot, I couldn't get with the rubber faces. It really fucked with me. You know?
I like to making like Robert De Niro younger.
Yeah, it really took me out of the experience a little bit. I think the movie itself, that aside, is a fucking masterpiece. But like, and I think it'll be respected for what it is in the next 20 years, hopefully, because I think people, you know, I think the whole like it's 3 hours meme has kind of gotten pulled over. But like,
well, it's for me, that movie was 3.5 hours, and it felt that way, but it was a good movie.
It's, oh my god, I think it's the most stunning and horrifying film about mortality that I've ever seen in my life. I think it's so scary. I think that it's talks about like just like, I think when Scorsese made so many flashy gangster movies and everybody saw them, they were like, oh, this is going to be awesome if we become gangsters. And he's like, no, that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that like being a gangster is awful. And then The Irishman, he was like, you want to see how fucking grim it is to actually be a fucking criminal? And then he basically showed you like a person who basically had no empathy and no soul and ended up completely alone. His daughters don't want to talk to him anymore. He's just fucking sitting in that room. He killed his best friend, you know, and like he's just waiting on death's door with nothing at the end, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
I think that like that is, but like, I don't want to get into a thing on The Irishman. I just think, I just think it's so misunderstood, and I think it's such a shame. But yeah, I think that, you know, I don't know. I'm sure the movie would have worked with different actors as well, and the whole rubber face thing really fucked me up. But that's what I'm saying, right? Like, I think there's a lot of ways that you can make Ex Machina with the same screenplay, different directors. There's a lot of different ways to make it, and I think that they made absolutely all the right choices.
Yeah, well, the overarching theme, at least for me, is that like it's the theme that like humanity controls more than they can handle, and it's been done in other sci-fi movies, but I think this movie does it in a unique way, which keeps it interesting. That's at least what I think. I mean, they talk about so many different topics, right? Like as you mentioned, like heavy-handed stuff. But you know, what are some themes in this movie that stand out to you? Because I feel like there's so many if you really dive into it.
Interestingly enough, I mean, yeah, there's the whole Icarus aspect. Like when you fly too close to the sun, like, you know, the robots will kill us because we can't help ourselves. We need to keep creating, and I think we're watching ourselves getting consumed by technology right now. And I know that's such a boring comment to make. I think that's such a fucking oversaid thing, but like, you know, the movie is about, you know, the dangers of technology and the dangers of our own ego, because why do we give a shit about making AI? It has to do with our own ego, you know. We want to be gods, you know, because, but at the same time, it says a lot of interesting, I mean, he's a CEO, and at one point he admits to the fact that he turned on everybody's cell phone and microphone, camera and microphone on their cell phones, and he was watching basically everybody on Earth, and that nobody was ever going to call him out because the companies would have to admit that they were doing it as well, you know. And it's such an offhanded remark, but you're like, that's fucking terrifying, man. Like these corporate fucking global technocrat CEOs have so much fucking power over us, and like we're so willing to give them all of our private information and our money and our time and attention and, you know, our personalities, and, you know, for God knows what ends they're going to use them for, you know. And the aspects of like our personal protection and our privacy. And, you know, there's a quote, I don't remember who said it, but somebody said that in the future, privacy is going to be the new celebrity, you know. Like privacy will be something that people strive towards, and something that's like going to be an obtainable goal, because we've gladly voluntarily given our privacy away, you know. And like this guy wins a contest, he doesn't even know what it's about, and he gladly steps into a helicopter and flies onto some random fucking property of this mysterious CEO, because like, well, he's a CEO, he must know what he's fucking doing, you know. And it ends up with him dying a cruel and horrible oxygenless death.
Mhm.
I don't know, man. I think the movie talks about a lot of, what are we capable of, and
Right.
for what, and what are we servicing by doing this, and why can't we just help ourselves? Why can't we just enjoy? Like they live that property is like the most gorgeous heaven on earth place ever.
Mhm.
You know, anybody's fantasy would just be able to live out there and just to fucking enjoy the waterfalls every day. And to him, it's like it's
Yeah.
not enough. I got to be God.
Yeah.
And it makes him insane, and you're just like, Jesus Christ, man, like what the what, like how deluded are you, like how wealthy are you? And I don't
Yeah.
know, I just think it talks a lot about like how insane people are and how fucking fucked we are and how we're unable to appreciate and enjoy anything, and how we just have to, we're so self-destructive. And yeah, self-destruction, that's a good point too, because he's just drinking the whole time and fucking
Yeah.
and stuff, right? And like this whole AI creation, just self-destructive behavior. We're literally creating the machines right now that are going to kill us,
Mhm.
which is so odd, because why don't we just fucking hang out?
Power cuts. Backup power activated.
Why did you tell me I shouldn't trust Nathan?
Because he tells lies.
Lies about what?
Everything.
Including the power cuts?
What do you mean?
Don't you think it's possible that he's watching us? Right now? The blackouts are orchestrated so he can see how we behave when we think we're unobserved.
I charge my batteries via induction plates. If I reverse the power flow, it overloads the system.
You're causing the cuts.
So we can see how we behave when we're unobserved.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't really serve
Humanity is,
a purpose.
we're creating emissions to make money, but those emissions are going to fucking kill us, and money's not going to have any worth on a planet that's dead. And it's so strange. Like, are we destined to want to destroy ourselves? Like, are humans not able to exist here? If we're out of the food chain and nothing destroys us, are we the ones who have to destroy ourselves? Is that the purpose of us here, right? And that's what I'm saying. Like, I would never think about these things every day, but like watching this movie forces you to think about these things and say these things out loud, and then eventually you're like, oh fuck,
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it gives you a lot to work with.
Yeah, and I think also this is one of those movies that how it will age will entirely depend on like where technology is heading, and I feel like it'll be relevant like for a while. I don't know, with the way things are going and how fast they're moving. So I think that's an interesting thing to keep an eye out for, like in the coming years.
I think the best aged sci-fi movie of all time is Children of Men.
Yeah.
I
And I
just saw that one
is,
last year.
This one is a close second for me for sure.
Yeah, I love Children of Men.
Children of Men is fucking terrifying.
Blew me away.
Our world now, the movie came out 14 years ago, and our world now is looking like it's on full steam ahead to be looking like Children of Men in the next 10 years.
There's a lot of
like there's literally immigrants in cages.
In that movie.
1984 style propaganda, and I'm like, yeah, this is now. Like this is
kind of happening. So it's kind of scary.
Yeah, and I think that Ex Machina is kind of in the same boat, not on the social aspect, but on the technological aspect of like, yeah, we should be fucking afraid of what we're doing to ourselves right now.
Yeah. It like I mentioned earlier, it makes me feel the same way watching a Black Mirror episode can make me feel. Like
it does feel like a 2-hour long Black Mirror episode. That's the first thing I thought when I put it on together. But honestly, it's better. It's more developed. It's got better characters. I mean, I love Black Mirror as well, but I think that I wouldn't even.
I mean, it's better than a lot of the individual episodes, I would say. But there are certain episodes of Black Mirror that I love as much, if not more.
But I wouldn't rewatch a lot of the Black Mirror episodes, but I've rewatched the movie.
That's true. Black Mirror, like most episodes, are pretty unpleasant, so it's hard to like go back and watch it. But this movie, like, even though the ending is like kind of a big shock and it's kind of disturbing, the movie itself is still like a fascinating watch, and there's so many little things you can pick up on watching it again, like in the dialogue. So
no, but kind of you're saying about how his film and how sort of like, especially with your parallel to Black Mirror, how this film just kind of in the future, this kind of has a nihilistic kind of viewpoint, sort of, how powerful kind of you're saying about how, humans, we're building these AIs. Well, we get greedy and we build them, the best they can be, so much so they resemble humans. And it is that kind of bleak outlook of the future a little bit. But that's especially, I can see with the similarities of Black Mirror, because a lot of theirs have that theme of just some bleak aspect of the future. that like especially you're talking about of the lack of privacy too, and also that also ties in with the writer and director of this film, Alex Garland. Well, this was the first like film he directed. He also wrote the film 28 Days Later. So that's kind of a very
right.
post-apocalyptic kind of bleak outlook on the future too. So,
but I gotta say, I agree with my boy Alex, man. I'm totally in the same boat. I have the exact same anxieties. I have the exact same fears. I would love, you know what? Actually, I've been, I'm never gonna do this, and I think it's honestly, every time I tell somebody, they think it's stupid, and I agree. I would love to do a social thriller remake of The Birds, where we pollute the air so much that the birds decide to kill us all.
wow.
That's just The Happening, dude.
No, The Happening is unwatchable.
I just watched that movie and I was laughing my ass off the whole time.
I've never seen that movie, but there's that one scene that I've watched a million times where the old lady is in the hall and she's like, "I hear you plotting against me, trying to kill me."
I was
like, what, ma'am? No.
That movie is like The Room level of like hilarious. Like it's bad.
And every time somebody like asks me, they're like, "Poe, did you just do this?" I'm like, "What, ma'am? No."
It's basically the same. It's basically like the trees get mad at us. So
yeah, but that's
but executed in a very dumb and not great way, but entertaining to watch.
With Mark Wahlberg will not be allowed on set.
They're dying. I need a second. They released it? We're not near the road.
We can't just stand here as uninvolved observers.
I need a second, okay? Just give me a second.
We're not gonna be one of those assholes on the news who watches a crime happen and not do something. We're not assholes.
Just a second.
There were children in that room. Elliot, please tell us what to do.
I need a second, okay? Why can't anybody give me a goddamn second?
Mark Wahlberg, you shouldn't play a science teacher. That just doesn't fit.
I agree because I don't buy it. There is no amount of acting that I buy that Mark Wahlberg is a science teacher.
He's America's greatest actor.
He's up there.
Highest paid up there, but like
with like Lindsay Lohan. And anyway, I just wanted to I just need to give a shout out to one thing on this while I'm here, and I have the floor. The dance sequence.
Yes.
I'm gonna tear up a dance floor, dude.
Dude, I've been wanting to like I wanted to like print out all my favorite movie screenshots and hang them on like basically place them on my wall. And I really want to print out this scene of like him with the red lighting dance. I'm fucking obsessed with that scene because I don't know why it's there. And the movie is not any different if it's not there.
But it's great.
And it's like the most like, you tore up her picture. I'm gonna tear up the fucking dance floor, dude. And then he just like
starts dancing.
He tears up the fucking dance floor. I'm like, why is this in here? I haven't found a narrative answer for the scene yet. I don't know why. Like, I can't imagine like Alex Garland, going to the producers, be like, all right, in this scene, Oscar Isaac just tears up the fucking dance floor with the rope, and they're like, why? And he's like, give me my money or I'm walking. Like,
this scene has to be in the movie.
It has to be. No, it's my vision.
You know what? I hope there was a fight about getting the scene in, and I'm glad if there was, because
the movie almost didn't get made.
The amount of joy that I feel, I'm glad. I would be upset if this movie existed without this scene. And if somebody told me in an alternate universe, like, yeah, we have that scene in our movie, and I'm like, what?
Come on, buddy. After a long day of Turing tests, you gotta unwind.
What were you doing with Ava?
What?
You tore up her picture.
I'm gonna tear up the fucking dance floor, dude. Check it out.
It's interesting because they use the red lighting in that scene, and it's like in any other scene, the red lighting is like an ominous sign, but that scene, I'm just like happy and having fun, like watching Oscar Isaac dance.
I could honestly watch those YouTube 10-hour loops. Give me a 10-hour Oscar Isaac dancing loop to follow.
There probably already is one.
I bet that exists because there's like.
I'm gonna look it up right after this for sure.
There's some, there's a loop exists, and if not,
there has to be a loop.
You should make one.
I'll make it. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, just make it if it's not there.
It'd be totally worth it.
The internet needs more of those loops.
I agree. If there's one thing the internet is missing, it's 10-hour videos. Oh, the mask wall. I love the wall of masks. Where you see the evolution of society. That was awesome.
That's a creepy scene. And
that's an awesome
scene of just all the wall of the masks. That might be No way. Have we talked about favorite scene? Because that's up there for me.
I mean, we can talk about it. Do you guys have a favorite scene in this movie? I mean, for me,
Dance scene.
it's dance scene, and then the last 20 minutes or so are pretty wild. But that's pretty much all I mean, for me at least.
I mean,
the scene where she gets dressed with the human parts is pretty awesome.
I think it's one of the creepiest scenes. They're just
Mm,
really freaky. That's a
yeah.
you know, like I also like that scene where the power goes out and she says she can't be trusted.
Yeah,
It's
that's
the first
one of the-
time that you're like, your suspicions are affirmed, that you're like, oh fuck, this dude's creepy from the start, and then like you kind of trust him after a while. You're like, oh, he's kind of chill. And then when she tells you like don't trust him, you're like, oh fuck, like I was worried I had a knot in my stomach about this, but like now it's true.
Yeah, but one of the last questions I would like to ask on the show is there anything in the movie you would change, or do you think it's perfect the way it is?
I don't know, man. I do think narratively, pacing wise, acting wise, tone, everything, I think it's a perfect movie. I mean, yeah, obviously there's things you can improve. I think that there's, you know, there's nitpicks with everything, but I have such a hard time. I couldn't direct a better movie, not even close. I mean, I could fucking direct anything, but like I don't know, man. There was something today about actually the visuals that kind of annoyed me. Yeah, there's a scene where he's having like a fantasy of him and Ava standing on a mountain and kissing, and like it's like shot in black and white, and it's like a fantasy scene, and it's really fucking stupid. It looks like shit.
Yeah.
I would just cut that out. I don't think it's necessary at all. I think we get the point that he likes her. I don't think we need to see them like, I don't think we need to see his fantasy of them like standing on the mountain in black and white and holding each other. I thought that was like today. I was like, that's whack. That's stupid. I'd take that out.
I guess
And that's
so.
it. That's all. But those are nitpicks, man. Those are little things. I think this is like a perfect Chinese finger trap puzzle box fucking slide puzzle. It's great. It's so perfectly woven, man. You can't touch anything about this movie, because if you touch anything, you're fucked. Like you would ruin it.
Yeah, for me, I mean, this movie, it's a great science fiction movie. For me, it's not like perfect, but it's
why, Yash? I feel like you're hating, and I would like you to put down the haterade.
I'm not
and
hating.
Stop taking such big sips of your haterade. I think that, you know.
It's just a little bit slow paced for my taste.
Oh,
interesting.
Really?
It's okay.
I feel that.
It's tense.
You ever watch Space Odyssey?
Well, I have. I like this movie more than that
I
movie,
don't.
honestly. Actually,
I'll go on a hecker and not say I'm not a big fan. She doesn't want to Space Odyssey.
it's still a great movie. It's very ambitious in its ideas, the way it looks, the way the actors perform so well with just a few of them. But yeah, I don't know. It's just.
But Yash, if this is a slow movie to you, then I kind of want to sit you down Clockwork Orange style and force you to watch a bunch of old slow fucking.
I mean, I've been watching some.
He has
recently.
a problem with old movies.
I don't have a problem with old movies. I
No,
like
you
it.
had-
I completely
you
get
had
it.
one.
I completely get it. I totally get it, and I think it's just a matter of like I think we have busted attention spans.
Yeah, it's part of
Our
it.
attention spans are totally fucked, and I think it's such a shame. And I've literally been forcing myself to watch more movies that breathe. Have you watched Lost in Translation?
Yeah.
Great movie.
You like it?
Yeah, I like it. I don't love it, but I like it.
I honestly could have probably done a better episode on Lost in Translation because I'm obsessed with that movie. But like,
Mhm.
man, I've really just started appreciating. Maybe it's because you guys are the same age as me. I think maybe it's because I'm getting a bit older. But like, I really just like putting something on and just letting it breathe in front of me, you know, and like not
Yeah.
needing to be
Mhm.
like fucking, you know, dopamine the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, like two films from this year that I loved that were a bit slower were Nomadland and Minari. I loved both of those. They were more like slice of
Minari was
life,
good.
quieter movies. But
I haven't watched Nomadland yet, but did you watch Sound of Metal?
yeah, I like
love-
that movie.
Oh my fucking
No,
god! Dude.
No,
Holy
no,
shit.
I really love Sound of Metal. I think that was my favorite movie of the year.
That movie is probably my favorite movie of the last like two, maybe that movie is unreal.
I
great movie.
love it.
Holy
Love what they did with the
shit.
sound and just.
But did you think that movie was too slow?
No, I liked it.
Okay, interesting.
I liked all the
Curious.
movies we've talked about. But what I'm trying to say is like, I don't.
You're a
used-
Nolan head. I get it. It's fine.
No, it's just a slow paced. You know, I try to not use it interchangeably with boring because they're two very different things.
Sure.
This movie is not boring in any way. It's just slow. It's just, I don't know, like the last 20 minutes or so, like, you know, thrilling and surprising. But it's a great movie. I mean, it's just not one of my personal favorites.
I think it's a matter of taste.
Yeah.
I've really started to get into like really slow moving movies. I just think that there's a lot more time to let stuff wash over you, and to the point where like when I now watch like an intense action film that's like modern, I get overwhelmed to the point where like I feel sick, where I'm like, Jesus,
Yeah,
I can't.
I mean, there's an art to making a
Push
good
into it,
action
you
film
know?
too. There's a lot that are
What,
they have
no,
a lot of
no, not a dig on action films at all. I'm starting to like, the older I'm getting, and I'm not getting old, I'm just saying like you know, the more I'm getting into my like tastes and stuff, the more I'm sort of starting to filter the things that I like and the things that I don't really like. And I'm realizing more and more that I really appreciate scenes that take their time. And scenes
Yeah,
that breathe.
for sure.
And I really like living with characters and living in the world and just letting myself, you know, fall into
And
the
like
dream.
the thing is, like, a movie can be fast paced, but it can also be like overwhelming and not entertaining. So it's
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
pacing is just one aspect of a movie.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I guess the last question we have is, if you had to convince someone to watch this movie, what would you tell them?
I had to convince my best friend to watch this movie today with me. And he was like, "What's the movie about?" And I was like, "I'm not going to tell you." I said, "It's fucking awesome." And he was like, "Well, what kind of movie is it?" I was like, "I'm not going to tell you."
Honestly, that's a good way to get someone to watch this
He would
movie.
turn his head to me and be like, "What?" And I was like, and he was like, "Is she a robot too?" And I was like, "I don't know, dude. I guess we're gonna have to find out." And that was the entire fucking experience, man. You just just tell them, just be around people who trust you, and you're not gonna disappoint them. I think if you watch this movie with a friend and they're like, "This is stupid," then you need to end the friendship.
Yeah,
that's not a joke. Don't laugh.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I know you're serious, and that's why it's funny.
I don't give a shit. Friends? You can make friends, okay? You can't make this movie.
Yeah, that's true.
It's amazing that yeah. I'm overdoing it now, but anyway, I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean,
I love you guys.
Yeah, Zach, if you want to say your bit about that. Zach's gonna say his bit, I'll say my bit, and then I'll say the conclusion, and then we're good. We're golden.
Very cool.
No.
Sort of what you're saying about like you don't want to give too much away. So I'd say, you know, it is a movie that examines the perils of advancing like AI too much. And that's basically as far as I'd say. I don't know.
Yeah, pretty much what I would say is that pretty much for either of the two Alex Garland sci-fi films, I haven't watched his Hulu series yet, but he has one. I think called Devs. Yeah, I've heard it's pretty good. But I would say if you're interested in seeing like very both intelligent and relevant science fiction, Ex Machina is a good choice. That'll make you think, it'll entertain you. It has a lot of elements of other sci-fi movies, kind of spun into its own unique way. So yeah, if you like sci-fi, horror type movies, it's a good choice.
Why don't we start with you telling me something about yourself?
What would you like to know?
Whatever comes into your head.
Well, you already know my name. And you can see that I'm a machine. Would you like to know how old I am?
Sure.
I'm 1.
1 what? 1 year or 1 day?
1.
So we have reached the end of today's discussion of Ex Machina. I wanted to thank Paul for joining us today.
Thank you guys for having me on. I love you guys. Take care. I'm always glad to be on the pod. And,
yeah, for sure.
Let me know the next thing you guys want to talk about. Something. Let's do Lost in Translation next time.
Yeah, we'd be happy to have you again.
Awesome.
From all of us at Cinema Convos, thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show, give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to stay up to date on new episodes. And we hope you tune in next time.